The following interview with a decorated and well-seasoned African pseudo-operator of the Selous Scouts Regiment is a world first. In a well-saturated media landscape of Special Forces histories, this story has not yet been told. Having met numerous veterans of Southern Africa's proxy wars of the 1970s through my business buying old military gear, I was struck by the universal admiration shown towards African soldiers by former members of the Rhodesian army from European heritage. And this led me to explore the possibility of getting this down on tape for posterity. And foremost amongst those encouraging me was the president and various members of the Selous Scouts Regimental Association. And for that encouragement, I thank them. The Selous Scouts was formed in 1973 as a multiracial unit. Indeed, its motto is Pamwechete, together as one. Consisted 90% African soldiers, ASs, and 10% European soldiers, ESs. And it is considered that indirectly the regiment accounted for 68% of insurgent deaths during the Rhodesian Bush War, largely in part to the phenomenal success of pseudo-warfare operations, which entailed the infiltration of communist, terrorist or CT units, the assimilation with the members of those units, and then the eventual destruction of those units. The training, bravery, resilience and initiative required to achieve this were of the highest order and contributed towards the Selous Scouts' reputation as the most successful enigmatic of the Special Operations Forces of its time. The unit was disbanded in 1980, and with the onset of Zimbabwean independence, the nucleus of the Selous Scouts formed the elite Zimbabwe Parachute Regiment, and most members of the Scouts stayed in the Zimbabwe Army generally. My thanks go tonight to Dave Scales, himself ex-Rhodesian Special Air Service, Selous Scouts and South African Special Forces Reconnaissance Commando, whose absolute unstinting enthusiasm, support and help with this entire enterprise has led to where we are now. And indeed it is Dave who, via a video link from the UK, will conduct the interview. And my biggest thanks of all go to the subject of tonight's interview. In the 38 years as a British Army Reserves officer and a specialist in old militaria, I have encountered hundreds of distinguished soldiers, but none of whom have surpassed the stature and the dignity of the gentleman whose military story you are about to hear.
Maneru Ano, it is really a pleasure to be able to speak to you again after so many years, and it is a huge privilege for me to listen to what you say, as well as all the people that are going to be watching this interview. So this particular interview is going to focus on two main subjects, which will be training, in other words, selection, bushcraft, tracking, and dark phase. And then we will move on to internal pseudo operations. So Ano, to start off with now, we know that you were in another unit before you joined the Selous Scouts. What unit was that?
It was 1 RAR. I joined it at Methuen Barracks, and my date of attestation was on the 1st of May 1973.
Wow. Okay, that's good. Rhodesian African Rifles. That's a very, very famous unit all over the world. And how long were you in the RAR for?
I joined. My pass out was in October, so which means in February, between February, that's when I joined the Selous Scouts, which means 1974. It was something like 4 months or less.
Okay, okay. Why did you join the Selous Scouts? What made you join the Selous Scouts?
The Scouts, the selection officers came to the camp, and they were gathered, and they told us what role the Selous Scouts was going to play. So we were impressed about it, like ground coverage, getting information, all those things. That's what everybody wanted. So we joined the Selous Scouts, and we were quite happy about it.
Okay, and moving far, far forward, how have you adjusted to life after the military? I know it's been a long time since our war finished in 1980, or that part of the war anyway. But when you eventually left, how did you adjust to life?
After the army, in fact, in 1980, I continued working with the Zimbabwe National Army up to 1995, and after retirement, I worked for a year in Angola, contracted to the United Nations as a radio operator. So life was a bit quite good at that time.
I'm so happy to hear that you turned into a radio operator, because that is what I really enjoyed doing as well. So let's get back to the beginning. So you've left the Rhodesian African Rifles, you're with all your comrades, everybody's in the mood, and off you go, and you get to Salisbury, now Harare, and you had to start off with a selection course. Can you tell me, where did your selection course take place? How long was it, and what was it like?
The selection course was at Makuti. In Makuti, there was a trekking camp there, but now it was turned into a selection camp. So we did the assault course, PT, bushcraft. That was the first phase, and the range work. And then after that, we went to the second phase, which was survival in the bush without food or anything, whereby we moved through the bush and ended up going up the Kotakota mountain and down to the Marongora old road. That's where we found some heavy stuff there, which we were made to carry for about 15 or something Ks, and they were eventually picked up. After getting picked up, they wanted to test our bravery. They then told us that there is a base in Zambia which needs to be attacked. So you guys, tonight we're going to Kariba, we're going to board a boat, and we're going to attack that base in Zambia. So the other guys got scared. They chickened out. They dropped out of the selection course. But we managed to go there to the boat. We got into the boat. So the boat was just moving around and around and around in the Kariba area. Then it was stopped on our side. Then they said, this is the base. But then there was a fire burning. Then we're looking down. Then we see, those butter things. That thing we butter in the ration pack. So then we saw them, and they see them, the ration tins. Then the guys, we said, no, guys, these people are playing with us. This is not Zambia. And then everybody was called back, and they went back. Then we were told that, the selection pass, you have passed it.
So that was a real SKUZAPO trick, that.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's very interesting, and we also know, and it's well documented, that you were decorated for bravery, and not surprising, bearing in mind what you did. So at this point, I'd like to pass you sincere congratulations on that. So well done. Just as a matter of interest, on your selection course, I don't know how many people started or how many finished. Do you have a figure?
Yeah, I don't actually it might have been 20 or something like that, because we're coming from different units. Some from, the same RAR, and some from the Europeans, from RLI, and other units. But most of them it was from RAR and the RLI. That's most of the guys where they came from. So the number was 20 to 25, but I didn't check it. And when we passed, we were quite a few people, because there were enough people to form a troop which consisted of about 16 or something people.
Okay. So we're going to move on to pseudo training now. We know that part of the selection course did consist of tracking. I think that is where the European soldier may have struggled a bit, whereby the African soldier excelled at it. Your tracking ability and your bushcraft capability, in my opinion, was far superior to ours, because you grew up in what was called the tribal trust lands in those days. You knew the bush much better than we did. You could navigate easily without a map and without a compass. So I think that is where, like I said, you excelled. And where you excelled even more was on the pseudo training part. Now, the part that I would like you to explain, because a lot of people don't know about it, they've heard about it, but they don't really understand it. And dark phase, it's 2 words. Not many people know what dark phase means. And I would like you to explain to us your dark phase training. In other words, you are now learning how to be someone that you are not. So one can imagine how very dangerous this style of warfare was. So to prepare for it, it was done at your training camp. Tell us now, please, what did it entail?
Dark phase was a base which was about 5 kilometers or less from Makuti. So there was a base there where we built up shelters, just like what the TAs did. That's where we were taught passwords, Chimurenga songs, how the terrorists based, where the commander set, the history and all the rest of the group. So that's what we were taught. It was mainly how the gooks stayed, or how the gooks operated. That was how the dark phase was all about. And we stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then that was the end of the story.
Okay, so the dark phase, I like the expression, was when one wore the cloak of evil to fight evil. After your 2-week course, and after you passed out, you were going to do a bit more advanced training, and you would move to a Selous Scouts fort, of which there were 7 in the country at the time. And before you deployed, you would get a briefing by the special branch people, the BSAP Special Branch, and you would also be briefed by the Selous Scouts intelligence people. What kind of information did the Special Branch people give you to arm yourself with the right information?
The SB was very important to us because they gave us of the terrorist composition, what numbers moved in a particular area, and that was most of the case. The information we got from the SB.
Okay, so the Special Branch people gave you the basics.
Yeah.
So you knew the area in which you were going to deploy would consist of a gang of anything between 6 and 20 people.
Yeah, that's right. And the commander's name, and also the contact people, the people who were supposed to go and they meet up so that we could get information, and to be always on the lookout for not to be compromised.
Yeah, and that is where the tricky part came. I believe in the beginning it was easy because they didn't understand, they didn't see, they didn't know who SKUZAPO was. And I think after time, or after a certain amount of time in the bush, when you met up with these gangs, you would learn more about them, so it would be easier when you infiltrated into the next insurgent gang.
The dark phase, it was quite good for giving us a picture of how we're supposed to operate, but also at the same time, I think there's something with the type of operation we're supposed to carry, because we're supposed to move in the crawls at night. And once we moved in the crawl and we met up with the terrorists, we were just supposed to open fire. That is how the SKUZAPO came up, because the shooting people which gave us out.
Okay, so if you can just describe the process. You've moved into a frozen area, you know where a particular group is, you want to meet up with that group, so you're going to go in with a cover story, and you will meet a Mujiba, and you would tell the Mujiba your story. How would he get you to the insurgent commander and his political commissar? How did that meeting take place? What happened next?
The most important thing was to not get compromised, because there was a contact man, and we first met that contact man and tell them that we are so we've just arrived, we are new recruits, we are from Mozambique, so we try to bluff them. Then this idea of meeting up with a contact man, it was a mind game. You see, it was a mind game to read each other, to see that this person is accepting us or not. So we would write a letter and give it to the contact man to go and give to the gooks. And the gooks, if the contact man accepts us, then the gooks will agree to meet us up. They will write a reply and say, okay, let's meet up. They will give us a place where to meet up. So that was a bit tricky issue, that one, because we were not sure what we were going to say. So in the first time, we were moving with a platoon commander, troop commander, being a white guy, and he painted his face with that dark camouflage. So it was quite extremely dangerous, because if they would have seen that person, that was going to be quite bad. So we were supposed only to meet up at night, you see. So we changed the concept, and then we said, no, we cannot do that. We need to operate right in the ground. We'll take the platoon commander, leave him right up on a big secured place where he can see everything, where he's secured. So we go on the ground and we mingle with the locals. You see now.
Okay, so now the meeting is set up and you meet with this guy, the sector commander or the political commissar or both, and you mingle with the rest of the gang. And what was life like then? What was it like living with your enemy? What was it like?
In most cases, with all the groups, like I was my troop met up with. It was only the first one we met up at around 10 o'clock in the morning, and then in the following day in the morning, we captured them, told them that we've captured you. And the second group, we met up around 5 o'clock. That was now the most dangerous group we met. They were dangerous. And they were asking quite a lot of questions. They were trying to bluff them, and they continue asking for more than an hour. And then we ended up saying, you guys, you are now harassing us. How can you continue asking? We have told you where we came from. You continue to say, because you are pointing your gun at me. Put that gun down. To bluff, so to make sure that they relax. But the following morning, when we went to sleep, nobody slept. I don't know the others, whether they slept, but myself, I didn't sleep. And at 4 o'clock, everybody wake up, let's go, we want to move to another area. And then we said, hands up, come on, we'll pamper you. And there was one who wanted to give a problem, then we knocked him down, and the rest we captured them. He was a district commander, the person we met, and he was very important to the next coming operations.
Okay, so that happened very early on in your career, and that set the pace for the way that you're going to operate in the future. So now you've made the capture or captures, and they've got to get back to the fort because you now need to turn them. So how did that process work? You picked up a helicopter or picked up a vehicle, you go back to the Selous Scouts fort with these guys. What happened next?
After capturing these guys, we would ask them for information if whether there were still any groups within the area. If they said yes, there were groups within the area, nobody was taken back to the fort. Because we wanted to capture the second group. So we did that and we got them. And then we went for R&R. Our main concept, we saved quite a lot of gooks, because after a contact, if the gooks were captured, we made sure that we take them. They will not be sent to the SB or to the police, whatever, for trial or for conviction as terrorists. What we took them, and we wanted information, chop, recent information, because those newly captured provided us with new information and how the terrorists operated.
Yes, and I think they did that because they were in a state of shock. You can imagine. SKUZAPO has now arrived. You've captured them. They were caught totally unaware. They don't know what's going to happen to them, and you are taking advantage of the shock treatment. They are in a state of shock. They want to give you all the answers to the questions, which was vital. And then, is it true that once they got back to the fort, they would meet other insurgents who had already been turned, and these other ones that had been turned said to them, comrades, you know what, you must forget about your other comrades out in the bush. It's not a good place to be. If you come and live with us, we will put you on pay, we will give you a bonus, we will take your family out of the tribal trust lands, we'll take them back to our camp where there's a school, where there's a church, where there is good food, and so on. And of course, a lot of them decided to do that, not so?
That's correct, yeah. Because most of the guys, after being captured, they were distributed in different troops. So for them to stay too much in the fort, there was no time for that, because people were supposed to be on the move in the operation area, getting information or going back to R&R, and they were just moving others, going different areas, or in Mashingo, or whatever province.
Okay, so now it's time to redeploy. You have got these turned insurgents. They are now part of your group. You need to be sure that they're not going to turn on you. So you'll probably take their firing pins out or foul the firing pins down, and they're going to walk with you. It will be safe because you're in a frozen area, so there won't be any contacts. And then eventually, once they had your trust and you had theirs, you would give them weapons that would work. That is really incredible to imagine how confident you must have felt to have these guys 1 minute they're your enemy and the next minute they're part of your team. How was that?
It was easy, because I think the Fire Force give these guys a trauma for them to think of going back to the bush. They couldn't think about it. So once they joined us, they were quite good. We didn't even suspect them for being that they were going to turn on us. We really enjoyed working with them. There was not a problem.
What were they like as soldiers?
They were poorly trained, but we managed to, every time when we got back to camp, they were getting training, more good training, and they fitted in the groups, in the Selous Scouts.
Yeah, we remain amazed at how well the amalgamation worked. We are amazed at how good the morale in the unit was. I remember very happy evenings down at the round bar, where the black and the white, we sang the Chimarenga songs together, we drank our beer together, and that was the start of a really, really good brotherhood. Do you remember those days?
I remember it very well, the brown bar, and sometimes Colonel Dele used to give a big party, giving people chicken, chicken rolled in these foils, papers, and chibuku, and the beer, and singing Chiburenga. So it was quite good.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's get back to the pseudo deployments. So you've now been made ready, and you're going to deploy into an operational area. What was the composition of the pseudo team? How many were there of you? So include the ES, include the turned insurgent, and include the regular Selous Scout African as well. What was the composition of such a team?
Mostly it was the troop commander, one, and the rest were AS. And they were on the ground, actually on the operational ground, with the commander, or even one of the captured tails were appointed as a commander of the troop. But we asked, knowing that the sergeant, this is what. But we appointed the troop, the commander, the section commander, the political commissar, the quartermaster. So we mixed the regular and the tails.
Wow. Okay, so you've now deployed. How did you deploy? How did you infiltrate the operational area? Did you go by vehicle? Did you parachute in? Did you walk in? How did it work?
Deployment, it was done by vehicles, by 4.5s. And then, 4.5, but the TCVs did a very good job for protection in case of ambush. That's main vehicles were deployed in. And the drivers were lucky, because sometimes there could be two only drivers driver and his assistant were going back to camp because we were deployed by vehicle.
Yeah, very dangerous after they've dropped you off.
Yeah.
So you've been dropped off now, you know where the group is, so you're going to go and find a good place, a nice OP, a good OP. So after finding the OP, I suppose you stayed there in that OP as a group, and then there were people remaining behind on the OP whilst you people deployed, because you're now going to make your approach to the Mujiba and so on. How many of you moved forward from the OP, generally speaking?
Sometimes it was 8 or 7 or something like that, or 10, but we didn't want quite a lot of people because the number of people depended on the information we got as to how many the terrorists in the area operated. So if the terrorists were operating being the 6th section, we would do the same.
Now, off you go, and you need to keep the OP, the person in charge of the observation post, you need to keep him briefed. How did you keep contact with this man? Did you have a radio, or how did it work?
With the radio, we carried out with a small pack where everybody will carry the emergency rations, because sometimes the locals did not provide us food because having been compromised or not knowing us nicely, sometimes they refuse to feed us. So with the emergency ration, in that emergency ration, that's where the radio stayed. So we couldn't even, it was switched off, and we even stayed with it in the base or hide them in the bush to make communication. And sometimes when it was time, we would go to the hiding place, then talk to the radio. The situation here is okay. What do you see there from the OP? You ask them, what do you see? Can you see any groups moving around our area? Or sometimes even the OP would warn us, but guys, I've seen groups, they're coming your way. Be careful. You see. So that was how we operated.
Yeah, I think it would have been very dangerous carrying the radio in your backpack,
Yeah,
or in a small bag, because there was always a chance that one of the insurgents would say, hey, what's in there? And then you've got a big problem.
It was going to be fire straight away. If someone else does, we're going to start a punch up.
Yeah. And I think that is why your tracking and your bushcraft was so important, because if you left your radio in a cache or in a hiding place and you need to sneak away to go and tell the OP commander what's happening, you can't use a compass. You must know naturally where to go and dig up your radio and then make comms. Is it true that when you had your meeting, the ones that took place at night time, and you have got an RV organized and you will go and have this meeting around a fire, and you are waiting in the bush, and the insurgent commander would say, step forward, and you would have to come into the light so he could see you, and you would have to put your weapon down, and he would ask you for a password. Is that right?
We did not allow such a thing to happen. For dropping our weapon down, that was out of the question, because we wanted to remain on the lookout.
Okay. Okay, this is why it's so important to talk to you, because there are stories out there that are not quite true. It's good that you put it right. Yeah. Much earlier on in the interview, I was asking you if you could describe what was it like. You know, we are talking mysterious things. They're like magicians. SKUZAPO. What was it like? Was it frightening? Was it scary? Were you very nervous? Were you frightened? Were you wondering what happens if things go wrong? Did those things cross your mind?
No. We're quite okay, because our selecting a base was quite good, and also the number of people. Because nobody could just come and attack us. That time, it was impossible. Because we were always on the lookout. You see.
Okay. So after a while, the unit got bigger and bigger, and there were more people that had turned, and some of these people became instructors. Am I right in saying that? Some of the people that were turned?
That is correct.
And those people that had turned and became your instructors, what did they teach you?
No, there were different types of training. There was the selection course, and then there was the soldiering, basic military training. You see, so there was two different things. In Makuti or Wafa Wafa, there were soldiers who were training what was the selection, and all this were the dark phase and what. And then at camp, there was also instructors who were training soldiers, basic military.
That's quite amazing. So are you saying that these instructors, if you were not good enough, they would tell the Selous Scouts instructors that this man is not suitable to deploy, to enter a gang, because he would be compromised very quickly? So did that happen?
Yeah, it did happen. There was a lot of things happening. Because also on the ground, let's say we, as a troop, we go to the ground, and then we get information from the locals. You see, so sometimes we would go up to the troop commander, and they tell him that the situation is like this, like this. You see, sometimes he refused. You see, he gives different directions. So sometimes there were squabbles about the directions where we should move and the what. So sometimes we had really serious arguments. You see, because of some did not understand the role we played on the ground. Some wanted to stay to bring in the exact soldiering in the SKUZAPO, which was not the case. So in that scenario, things were not going to move well.
Okay. The training, let's continue with that. You mentioned that some insurgents would come in from Mozambique. Were the training camps only in Zambia and Mozambique? Or did they also have training camps in what was Rhodesia at the time?
According to my understanding, there was no training in Rhodesia. There was no. Okay. The training camps were in Mozambique and Zambia and otherwise Tanzania. Because I still remember from Mukumbura, we used to cross the border, going to look for base camps there, and they were trying to attack them, but we couldn't find any, which means they were not, but they came from far inside Mozambique.
Yes, and that we know, and that is why your selection course was so difficult, because you had to walk with them, you had to walk very long distances. Right, so, you have a group that's coming in now from Mozambique, for example. How did they infiltrate into the country? Now, what different ways were there? How did they get close to the border? Did they get a bus? Did they get on a train? Or did they walk the entire distance from their training area, cross the border and into the country? How did they do it, and what size did they come in as? How big were the groups?
Sometimes they came quite big numbers, or 40, 30, something like that. They came on foot. Like in the part of Mkumbura, that area across the border, that area is a difficult area because there's no water, there's roads. That area was, I don't know how they survived, these guys, because that area was completely difficult.
Yeah, that's why they made your selection courses so difficult as well.
Yeah.
So we now have this group coming into the country, and what was their kind of modus operandi against the Rhodesian security forces? What did they do? If they came across the RAR or the RLI or the SAS or whatever, what did they do? What was their immediate action drills?
In most cases, they used to avoid the security forces because their information they were given by the Mujibas or the locals that be careful, there are soldiers in that place. So either they wanted to do an ambush, but in most cases they would go far from the security forces. They would avoid contacts with the security forces.
Okay. And the civilian population, what was their modus operandi if they came across civilians? For example, it might be a road working team or a construction team somewhere. What did they do about that?
The gooks.
Yeah. Would they leave the civilians alone and then just continue?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on what type of information they would have been fed by the locals, because the locals would have said there's a sellout here, and then trouble. But if the locals were happy with the guys, nothing would have happened.
Yeah, I think that maybe we learned a big lesson there. You know, the hearts and minds of the people. It is something that we learned too late. When I say we learned, I'm talking about the European soldier. We learned that too late, but never mind, that's the way it was. Now, it was fine for the Rhodesian security forces because they could communicate with each other using radios. How did the insurgents communicate with each other?
Letters. They're sending letters through contact men or through Mujibas. That's how they communicated. There were no radios.
Well, those Mujibas were very fit, running here and there like a speedy postman.
The Mujibas, they played a big role, because if there were no Mujibas, a lot of gooks were going to be wiped out.
Yeah, yeah. Gee, you know, this, you know, one can talk for hours and hours and hours on this topic.
Yes.
And, you know, at this point, I just want to say to you, and I know you, and I've seen you before. Other people are listening to this program wondering what you look like and what you are like as a soldier. And all of us who know you as being a most courageous and remarkable soldier from an equally remarkable unit. Anna, where does the secret lie? And how was it that the Selous Scouts were so successful?
The main trick was we were innovative. You see, we were not primarily operate in one area. We were innovative. The situation on the ground is the one which taught us how we should operate. Sometimes on OPs, we could go and establish an OP right up here, and the village is here.
So you mentioned that you served in another unit when we disbanded in 1980. So in what unit did you serve in the Zimbabwe Army after Zimbabwe independence and after the Selous Scouts was disbanded?
We served after the unit was disbanded, we were given the name changed to 4 Holding Unit, RAR. And for a very short period of time, it was changed to 1st Battalion one parachute battalion, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe, one parachute battalion.
And were they based at the old Andre Rabi barracks?
Yeah, that's correct. And it became a formidable force to be reckoned with, because most of the guys who were joining us, especially the Gooks, we were training them more, and lucky enough, we had a colonel or a major who was the commander. He did very well for us to not fight, because he was in good comms with the other army commander at the army headquarters. So we worked very well with all of us, with the guys.
So with your special forces and your pseudo training and experience, you were able to assist the Zimbabwe forces with improving their skills and techniques, not so?
Yeah, the army was, we were now in the army role. That's what we were not longer doing the Selous Scouts role, but it was army role. So that's where we increased their training so that they become good soldiers. And it can be stated that most of the bases in Mozambique were attacked by the parachute battalion.
I remember that. So there was no animosity between the turned insurgent, the normal Selous Scout, and the parachute battalion chaps. No animosity, no fighting. They just accepted it all.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite, there was no such thing. We're even discussing about the war we just ended. That you guys, even the other guys were saying, we met it there, we fired it there, we fought in that battle. Yes.
Okay, Anno, in some reports and articles in the public domain, it has been said that numerous African ex-Selous Scouts, especially the turned insurgents, who had worked in the Selous Scouts, plus the families of some were later massacred by Zimbabwe's ZANU PF. Is this the case?
No, it's not true. No one was murdered or was massacred. After the independence and the amalgamation of the troops to ZANU, ZIPRA, the Rhodesian army, we worked very well together. There was no such thing of people being murdered or harassed.
Well, that is such good news, because there are places in the world where I've been involved in discussions and they say they were. And it's so nice to hear from you, the man that was on the ground, the man that went from the one unit to the next, to tell us the truth. So that is very good news from my side, because we often wondered, so what happened to them? And now you tell me, which is good. From a personal point of view, I was interested to see how many people went into the South African Army. And it has been reported that after the disbandment of the Selous Scouts, only about 15 African soldiers and 25 European soldiers joined the South African Special Forces, mainly into the 5 Reconnaissance Regiment, which in some ways was the South African equivalent of the Selous Scouts. The rest remained in the old unit in Zimbabwe. So it was interesting for me to know that, and it just shows that the European soldier seems to be much more nomadic than the African soldier. He wants to stay in the country of his birth. He wants to remain with his culture, his beliefs, his rituals, and he wants to remain where his ancestors remain. And you did the right thing. I'm very proud of you. And Tatenda Shamwari, thank you, my friend. It has been a huge honor to have participated in this interview with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right. I enjoyed the interview.
And remember, I've still got some boerewors and some sadza here.
Yeah, I'm coming this soon.
Yeah, you must teach us how to make chibuku, then we can have chibuku as well.
Yeah, yeah, Zimbabwe.
4969, Sergeant Robin K, member of the Legion of Merit.
In November 1980, the Selous Scouts Regiment, which had been feared more than any other Rhodesian unit by their former enemies, and in whose ranks they had wreaked such devastation, ceased to exist. Rhodesia is no more and has joined the pages of history. But her security forces can be proud of the fight they carried to the enemy, for they won all their battles but lost the political war. And the regiment of the Selous Scouts can stand tall and proud amongst the forefront of these fine men. The Selous Scouts were innovative, imaginative, and brought a new dimension to insurgency war on a scale never before seen in any guerrilla war in any other insurgency campaign.